Okay, everybody, thank you for being here. This is going to be a great seminar. Really honored to have some people from NOAA here today. Our presenters are going to be Ariel Cohen and Gomberg. David Gomberg, my bad. They are basically going to be talking about fire weather in Topanga, forecasts, decision support, and community preparedness. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce Ariel.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Ariel Cohen. I'm the meteorologist in charge of the National Weather Service in Los Angeles, and we are housed in Oxnard, California. I'm going to give a real quick rundown of the different topics we're going to be talking about today, and we will definitely be having a Topanga focus on this. So definitely when we have our question and answer session, please, feel free to engage in discussion. I know there's a lot of factors that influence day-to-day life here, and I want to make sure that we're on the same page as our mission is integral to public safety, making sure that you and your families, your loved ones are all safe. So I'm going to be joined by Lead Meteorologist and Fire Weather Program Manager for our office, Dave Gomberg, to my right, and also Drew Smith will be joining in as well in our conversation. Today we'll be talking about the ongoing state of the fuels across the area, the ability for fires to spread rapidly and grow over far distances is a function of the environment in which they exist. In other words, ingredients. Kind of like when you bake a cake, you have to bring flour and maybe milk and eggs and sugar all together to make that cake. It's kind of the same thing with dangerous fire weather conditions. You have to bring all these ingredients together in addition to very strong winds for the fires to spread rapidly and over long distances. We have to have dry conditions. If it's really moist out there, really humid, it's going to be tough for fires to spread rapidly. We also have to have warm enough temperatures in order for ignitions to be favored, although there is a large range of temperatures. And the last ingredient on the menu, or rather recipe for extreme fire growth is fuels. That's the vegetation that's out there, the brush, the trees, some circumstances, the homes that are all burning and resulting in the explosive growth of fires as the extreme fires that we've seen become catastrophic disasters. Fuels is a very important component of that equation, or rather that recipe for fires to spread. And that's been a factor that we've experienced with all of the growth of fuels from the tremendous rains we had from late 22 to 23 into 24. All the rain shut off and we had tremendous fuel loading. We'll be talking about that. We'll be giving a fire weather outlook, what we're looking at for the next several months. We're going to be talking about our mission critical role that we have in public safety when it comes to providing decision support services. What that means is the warnings, the watches, the statements, the communications that we're delivering long in advance of big fire weather episodes, what that does to those that are making decisions out there that affect your day-to-day life. We're all working together and collaborating to make sure that we have strong science-based decisions that are being made in our integrated warning team. We'll talk about some of the fire weather products and services that come together to get the word out. The red flag warning being a vital tool to give you a heads up that those ingredients are all coming together at the same time and place. And then the particularly dangerous situation or PDS designation to suggest that there is a rare condition where these ingredients are so extreme that explosive fire growth is definitely on the table if a fire were to develop. And then we'll talk about some of the different tools that we use to keep you aware, to keep our meteorologists aware of the ever-changing atmospheric conditions that influence the growth of these fires. And so with that, I will pass this to lead meteorologist Dave Gomberg, who will be following up to talk about our fuel trends. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Dave Gomberg. So I'm the Fire Weather Program Manager here at the Weather Service at Oxnard. So one of the main themes that Ariel emphasized was it's all about partnerships, our collaboration directly with LA County Fire, That man right in the room there, Chief Drew Smith, is a very strong core partner for us. And it's the interaction that we'll keep coming back to, that common theme of how we work together with both fire and LA County Emergency Management together. It's a team process. And this is a fuel moisture chart that LA County Fire provides to us for our situational awareness and helping in our decision making. And you can see this live fuel moisture basically tracks how moist the vegetation is or how dry. So you can see in normal years, the black curve shows how we climatologically moisten up during the spring months and then dry out rapidly through the summer and fall. So here we are in the red right here in 2025, and you can see how quickly it has fallen. The lack of rainfall leading up to this current time has led through this very steady decrease in live fuel moisture, and we're already at that critical 60% threshold. So the fact of the matter is, last year at this time, 2024, you can see we did not hit critical till about a month later. So we're about a month ahead of schedule in terms of live fuel moisture here in the Santa Monica Mountains. So what this relates then to is our large fire potential. This is a graphic put out by the Predictive Services in Riverside, another partnering agency. And they kind of depict in the months of October through December where the greatest risk for large fire. So during the summer months, most of the large fires are focused over the mountain areas, the interior sections with the heat waves. But now that we're entering into prime time for Santa Ana wind season, you can see now that the red area has expanded to the coasts and valleys, and not just over LA, but all the way from Santa Barbara to San Diego. We are now at a higher risk for large fires. So in addition, from a Santa Ana wind perspective, October, November is always prime time for the hot, dry Santa Ana winds. So the big question is, moving into December and January, normally we'll have a few inches of rain, as we know, going into the winter. So that's the key, is the projection of how much rainfall. It's not just how much rain, but it's the timing of the rainfall that's very important. So last year, for example, it left the door open. As we went into December and January, the lack of rainfall set us up for strong Santa Ana winds, which do happen in December and January. So the key is how much rain do you have and what kind of vegetation response you're going to have leading into the winter months. So that's what led us to that vulnerability in January, was the lack of rainfall in the months of December and January leading up to it. So you may have heard the terminology El Nino, La Nina, which is a reflection of the water temperatures off the coast of the Eastern Pacific. So specifically for us, we're entering into a weak La Nina, meaning that the temperature of the water is actually below normal. So what is the implication of that for us in California? Well, especially here in Southern California, it typically skews the odds towards going to a drier winter season. Okay, not a guarantee, but it skews the odds or the probability that things are going to stay drier. So that could be problematic if we indeed have that drier year, especially after the past season. But again, La Nina is just one predictor, and it's not always the case. If you refer back to winter year 2023, that was a La Nina year, and we actually had above normal. So it's not an absolute predictor, but it certainly gives us a probability toward drier than normal. All right, so as Ariel mentioned in the beginning, it all is about decision support and working with the partners. Okay, can't emphasize that enough. Again, that triangle between weather service, fire agencies, and emergency management together working towards a common goal. And how do we do that? We have multiple forms of communication, one being conference calls, very important. Okay, we're not just in the background issuing forecasts and warnings. It's a collaborative process where we have all the fire agencies in Southern California, all the county emergency managers on these calls, and we're discussing and collaborating together and opening the forum to our partners to ask questions as well at the end of those conference calls. So at the end of the day, you can have a perfect forecast and a perfect warning, but if the partner doesn't understand it and it's not well communicated, then that's a failure. So our part is just as important as getting the accuracy right, but to communicate it effectively so the partners can act appropriately. So conference calls, Slack software, live webinars, partner email briefings, even direct phone calls to key decision makers. For example, Chief Drew Smith here. How many times, Drew, have we had one-on-one phone calls over the years?
Sometimes 2-3 times a day.
Yep.
I'll really do something that needs to be done.
Exactly. So it's situationally dependent. And when we have these major events, it's all about the coordination out ahead of it. Okay. So, and then lastly, is that on-site support. Okay. That's becoming more and more of a theme. We want to be eye to eye with our partners. So not just like here today for preparedness meetings, getting out ahead of the events, but also during the events when it really counts, being right there with the partners. So as far as some of the key products and services, I think one of the takeaways for you as a community is having some tools that you can look at to follow along and be situationally aware. And it all starts with a fire weather forecast. That's kind of like the foundation product. And we issue that twice per day during the high season. One more specialized product is we'll talk about in a second called the trend forecast. And that's used directly for the fire agency staffing plans. And we'll touch on that. And then spot forecast, very important. When you think about wildfire breaks out, what's the first thing that we're doing? We're dropping everything and prioritizing that wildfire spot forecast. But also we can do it for prescribed burns, as well as things like hazmat and search and rescue. Finally, we have red flag warnings and fire weather watches that Ariel will expand more on. And then on-site support, again, another big common theme where I want to be there directly with the events. And Rich Thompson is our incident meteorologist. He's actually out on location during these major fire events. And then also other meteorologists, Robbie Monroe, for instance, has been instrumental in being on many of our on-site deployments. Okay, so again, not just from the forecast office, being right on the front lines during the major events at the EOCs. So here's that example. Again, a really great example of the partnership and the decision support that goes behind the scenes that you may not be aware of. So for example, this is called the LA County Fire Danger Rating product, but it all starts with National Weather Service Oxnard forecast parameters. So these are different RAW stations that are owned by LA County, and I'll put a plug in for LA County. They have a fantastic network of RAW stations, and it's instrumental, not just having situationally aware current observations, but these RAWs locations allow for a forecast to be produced at these various locations within the county, and their network is the best. And Topanga, right here, they have a RAW station at Topanga. So we are providing a wind forecast and a relative humidity forecast each day, 24 hours in advance. And out of that comes indices, what we call fire weather indices, in particular, something called the burn index. And basically, the higher the burn index, the greater the threat. Okay. And in particular, Drew can expand upon this, but these are thresholds at 97th percentiles, like upper end events, that when those are met, that forces them into changes in their staffing plan. Drew, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Nailed it.
Okay. All right. I've had enough practice with you over the years, right? Okay. So again, decision support starts with us as a forecast, but the end result is a decision that shapes how they're going to staff resources ahead of major events. Okay, I mentioned the fire weather conference calls. Again, interactive calls, again, for a variety of things, not just for major fire weather conditions, but for high winds, flooding events, debris flow. It's all weather, all hazards, okay, depending on time of year. And again, it's not just us doing the forecast and warning. We have Chief Drew Smith routinely involved with the sharing of fuel and fire behavior information. He's absolutely instrumental on these calls. And again, we can have agency roll call for questions. And again, the main point right here, critical decision support information that's part of these calls during these major events. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ariel, and he's going to highlight the fire weather watch and red flag warning program.
Thanks, babe. Great job.
Again, I'm Ariel Cohen, Meteorologist-in-Charge, National Weather Service, Los Angeles, Oxnard. And some of the key headlines that we issue to really get the ball rolling when it comes to preparedness actions are the fire weather watch and the red flag warning. And I want to repeat what David mentioned. We are not issuing these in a box. We are collaborating. I remember leading up to some of these events, there was several times in a day I was talking to Drew Smith. I mean, we are in constant collaboration prior to the issuance, getting the intel, fire behavior possibilities, and we're talking about what we're seeing on the meteorology side. So it's truly an integrated decision between the fire agencies, emergency management, and the National Weather Service. So fire weather watch that's typically issued at least 18 hours, potentially a few days in advance of when that recipe for dangerous fire weather conditions all comes together. It indicates that we have gaining confidence of dangerous fire weather conditions. Red flag warnings are typically issued within a day or two of the onset of dangerous fire weather conditions, and confidence is high enough that we are looking at the rapid spread of any fires that get going in that environment. You know, we have specific criteria that we use in order to designate red flag warnings and their predecessor fire weather watches. When we're looking at critical fire weather conditions, those are defined based on relative humidity, that ingredient for dryness being below 15% with winds over 25 miles an hour, frequent gusts over 35, and this has got to happen for at least 6 hours. We also have a secondary criteria that dries out the relative humidity, but then for a more extreme dryness scenario, but then in that case lowers the wind in order to offset that. Thunderstorms as well, when they don't produce much in the way of wetting precipitation, we call dry thunderstorms. And then also this forecaster discretion type situations where we could get very strong plume-dominated fire growth, such as with the Bobcat and the Bridge Fire, where even if the winds aren't strong, the fires develop their own airflows around them and grow explosively, even if the winds aren't that strong, and spread over distances that would be equivalent to winds perhaps over 60 miles per hour, because they create their own heat machines. And that can be very dangerous. I'm sure you've all heard of particularly dangerous situation. This is a tag that we use on the most extreme of red flag warnings, typically issued within the day of the onset of the conditions, indicating that if a fire were to get going in that PDS, again, particularly dangerous situation, red flag warning, we'd be looking at a potentially catastrophic situation. That's the bottom line point. It doesn't guarantee that any fires get going at all. However, the odds of a fire getting going in a PDS red flag warning are increased because one of the criteria is damaging wind gusts, or those gusts over 60 miles per hour. And those can topple over power lines. Any active lines at all are more susceptible to being capable of ignitions of new fires. And that's just natural in these damaging wind type environments. Very low relative humidity and very dry fuels. So we're talking about the most extreme of extreme. While they are rare, some years we'll have them not at all. Some years we'll actually have multiple ones, like we saw last year. Now, I'm going to focus a bit more on Southern California fire dynamics and the types of weather conditions that we have. And let's go back to January 7th. I have a plot here of maximum wind gusts. Actually, I might come out here. And you can see that the maximum wind gusts visible to the San Gabriels in the vicinity of the Eaton Fire. And so we're looking at the Altadena, Pasadena areas. And this distance between these two maximum wind gusts is maybe half a mile, at most a mile, between that's 51 and 19. That's what each of these numbers are. Strongest wind gusts over that 24-hour period. That's an almost, we're talking about 30 to 40 mile an hour differences in the wind speed over just a half mile to a mile. I mean, you literally could go down the block and have 30 to 40 miles of difference of wind speed from place to place. You have the 65 and 43. We're talking about tremendous changes in wind speed from point to point. Now, I'm originally from Central Ohio, which is flat as a pancake. So we don't see this kind of thing here. Oh, thank you very much. The wind speed where I am is probably pretty similar in Central Ohio to where it is, say, 10 miles away, whereas here, you only have to go a half mile to have a wind speed that could be 40 miles an hour higher. That's inherent to what we have with the terrain here. And so I'm just showing all these examples. The different colors indicate how strong. Here's an 85 right next to a 58. I mean, that is a tremendous difference in wind speed that is just part and parcel of Southern California geography. So what we also can say is in meteorology, especially ahead of time, that 51 miles an hour could easily be the 19, and that 19 could have easily been the 51 miles an hour. There's randomness in the atmosphere that's beyond the bounds of scientific predictability, for which the certainty in what the wind speed's going to be here, or here, or here, or here, or here, or here, is not going to be known until right before or as it's occurring, when it would be too late to be prepared, to be taking those very important steps to be prepared, which is often why the cost of under-preparedness is far greater than the cost of being over-prepared. And this is a key thing here, because whether it's going to be 19 or 51 here, or, again, this could have been 85 and that could have been 85 too. All of these are possible, but the terrain causes all these, what we call eddies or little spin areas, to rapidly fluctuate the wind speed from place to place. I'm a big hiker, and recently when I was hiking in Griffith Park, I saw this little eddy kind of spin off the edge of of one of the cliffs, and probably the wind speeds at that local spot were over 30 miles an hour, but you go right outside of it and it's almost nothing. So the wind speeds vary so much, and we're not going to be sure about what they are because of that chaoticness in the atmosphere. So now let's take a look at the Santa Monica Mountains here. And I'm going to show a lot of these other couplets of extremely large, what we call gradients or differences in wind speed. Here's a 69 and 38 over very short distances over here. 98 and 29. We're talking about nearly 70 miles per hour of difference in wind speed from place to place. And I know here in Topanga, we typically are on the calmer wind side compared to surrounding areas. But you only need to step out a mile or less to get damaging wind gusts that you could probably see right up the hill potentially. And that 57 mile an hour here is probably nested all throughout here as well. And that 57 could just as easily have been that 23, and vice versa. They all could have been 57, because that is the randomness that we're looking at when we're talking about being beyond the bounds of predictability of the atmosphere until it's already happening. But at that point, it can be too late. When we're seeing these, it can be too late. And so what the fire environment, what we're looking at any given point, is going to be very much a function of the general area. Now, why is that the case? Let's say that we knew ahead of time that, the wind gust is only going to peak at 23 here, 57 here, 29 here. So we're safe, right? Not at all. Why? Well, think about, our esteemed science and operations officer back there, John Dumas, told me there's a big baseball game, the Dodgers and Phillies, coming up really soon. And think about how folks are preparing for baseball games. You have a pitching machine that's launching baseballs, and the speed of the baseball coming out of that machine is much greater, much faster than the airflow around it. That baseball is not moving with the air, it's moving through the air. It's getting launched. In other words, just because it's calm here doesn't mean you're safe, because embers that are being launched, just like that baseball coming out of the pitching machine at 57 miles an hour, can spread many miles very fast into a calm wind area. So it might feel safe. It might feel like things are fine. How could the fire spread? But when we look at fire weather conditions, it's not just where I am, it's what's going on around me. Because fire behavior is such a complex, dynamic process. And that concept of embers being launched at strong speeds causes the environment around to be manifested everywhere around it. And that's a really big issue because it can, again, coming from Tornado Alley as well, I did my PhD at University of Oklahoma in Norman. We had a lot of tornadoes around. And, you could easily have a tornado go by, a F5 tornado go by, 10 miles away. And your wind speeds where you are 10 miles an hour, right? I mean, but there's like 250 mile an hour winds very close by. And if I'm not taking that tornado warning seriously, and given the exact track of that tornado, the uncertainty inherent to that, I'm at risk for losing everything. And that's very key to understanding these atmospheric processes that get so complexified. I think I just made a word here. I am going the wrong direction. Dave, can you back it up, please? By all the mountains. I mean, it's kind of like, think of one more. You think, you stick the mountains up into the winds, everything is different all over the place. And so, again, just because it's calm where you are doesn't mean it's safe. And that's why we issue these fire weather watches and red flag warnings over a broader area, because the fire weather environment is going to be a function of more than just what's going on where you are. And we talked about all of this over here. Extreme wind speeds, as I mentioned also, at any point could have just as easily been observed anywhere else nearby, but because of the chaoticness and randomness in the atmosphere, those wind speeds are not going to be certain until right before it's happening or as it's happening, which is too late. It takes time to get ready. Red flag warnings, particularly dangerous situations, again, address the fire environment, which is a vicinity issue, not just where I am. Talked about the baseball analog here. Again, think about, whenever it's strong winds around you, it's calm where you are. Imagine that pitching machine, when all the folks are getting ready for baseball, launching embers. Those embers can fly a lot faster than the airflow around it once they get their inertia provided from that initial launch point where the winds are strong. All right, so time-wise, how are we doing?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, thank you very much. We have a special graphic that we used. You may be familiar with this in the lead up to the January 7th, 8th fire weather event and that catastrophic event. This is the most extreme of messaging instances I've ever been a part of, and I've worked at 9 different National Weather Service offices. The level of confidence and really that strong local expertise, the collaboration with Drew Smith, all the fire agencies, it is what gave rise to a very attention-getting scenario. Hopefully, we never have to issue something like this again. But the wind speeds are varying so much from place to place, but the impacts can extend well beyond across this entire area. And that's indeed what we saw. And so this type of messaging that we provide on our social media, that's also provided to our partners, our weather stories are all ways that you in the public can be able to get what our latest thinking is when it comes to dangerous fire weather conditions. The type of messaging that we provide, again, reference social media, reference our website, weather.gov/Los Angeles, will provide the different impacts, how extreme the conditions could be in our messaging that is very important for your safety. And we're communicating these conditions, potential conditions, days in advance. Dave, do you want to take it from here? All right. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Ariel. Just to wrap it up here, we want to give you a couple tools where you can follow along for situational awareness. And it all starts with our website. If you haven't been on our website before, it's weather.gov/Los Angeles. At the bottom, there'll be some icons. Pay special attention to the fire weather section right here. And once you're on that fire page, you'll see the spot forecast that we talked about earlier, the fire weather forecast, the red flag warning. And I draw your attention to these tools right here, especially Fire Weather Snooper. This is a game changer for you to follow along during real-time events. And how do you get to that? You go to Tools right here, and then down here is Fire Weather Snooper. Okay, how many in the room have seen this before? Okay, so this will be a great takeaway for you moving forward. This program will allow you to follow in real time what, not only the weather that's happening in terms of wind, temperature, relative humidity, but more importantly, what stations are actually hitting red flag conditions. That's what the red color shading depicts right here. These are the number of stations hitting red flag conditions. And then the duration right here is also important. You see that first number right there, 11, tied to the station Wiley Ridge. If you think back to what Ariel said about how much and how many hours do you need for red flag warning designation, it's 6 hours or more. So when you're following along here, you can see the individual stations, how many hours they're accumulating red flag conditions. The yellow colors represent weather stations that are approaching criteria. Okay, so yellow is approaching, red is exceeding criteria. Now, there's a few other options you can do. If you press the 3 bars right there, then you can get more options. And one being that you can mouse over any particular station like this. And you can also sort. So like for instance, if you want to know where the highest wind speeds, you just click on wind and we'll sort from the highest to the lowest wind speeds in your region. Then also, once you hit the 3 bars again, you have a tag that splits off here, and you have an option that comes up called Display Map. And from there, you get a graphic like this. And this is really easy to follow. So here you are in the Santa Monica Mountains, and you can imagine that the red areas, again, are the ones hitting red flag criteria, and the yellow ones are approaching. So as you zoom in, you'll get more stations there in real time. So just like Ariel was saying, gives you a great tool that just because it's maybe relatively calmer right here in Topanga, you can follow along and say, wow, just a mile down the road, I've got 60, 70 mile an hour winds and I'm hitting red flag type conditions. Okay, so that's the key takeaway here, is that the size of the circle matters. That's how big the wind speed is, and the color is important. The red is for red flag warning. And finally, Drew Smith, another great collaborative project, one of our outreach meetings, he said, hey, can you come up with a page that has all the links across Southern California Fire, from predictive services to Storm Prediction Center to National Weather Service to the fire agencies. Now we got a one-stop page that has all those important links. That's also on our website as well. Okay, so I will turn it over to Ariel here, and we'll receive questions.
All right, well, thank you so much. It's really been great speaking to you today, and we really want to take a moment to see what questions you may have. And I know we have a limited amount of time. We're going to wrap up pronto at top of the hour, but we are going to be around through the rest of today. So feel free to reach out to us at any time later today. So please ask questions.
I will say, if you have a question, there's a microphone right there. We'd like to get you on the microphone, please.
Thank you very much.
Can you explain how the Weather Service radios are activated and how that's done out of your office?
Absolutely. When we have a significant fire that is threatening many people, that is going to be a coordination with, say, the Los Angeles County Office of Emergency Management. We are working with them to have that constant flow of information so that assessment of how damaging or life-threatening this would be is determined. And then when it's been decided upon, again, working with emergency managers, that this is something that needs to be alerted. Again, it's not every single fire, but fires that are particularly destructive, there will be a, if you want to say, information flow through our weather wire systems that results in a special weather radio message, NOAA Weather Radio. It's the voice of the National Weather Service that gets sent under the emergency alert system. And if you have a NOAA Weather Radio that uses the specific area message encoder, or SAME, it will automatically alarm you with that message so that you have that latest up-to-date real-time awareness of what's going on with a fire that's affecting your area. So for instance, when I was working at LA County OEM on my own decision support services deployment, one of the fires we had determined needed to have this particular alert. We worked with the office, got the message into our system, and then either under a civil emergency message or fire warning or an evacuation message, especially when evacuations or large number of evacuations are occurring, NOAA Weather Radio will be a critical tool that you have, just like alarming for a tornado, but for a fire. So NOAA Weather Radio, broadcast from us, the output in terms of that emergency alert, that is all collaborated together so that you are aware when potential destruction's on the way. Did I answer your question fully, Drew?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Everyone has access to NOAA Weather Radios. Yes, that is available for everyone. And, aside from dangerous fire conditions, when we have major flood events or a tropical system or a tornado, for instance, that will also alert for all those different hazard types so that you're able to protect your lives and those of your loved ones. Yes. Oh. Wonderful. Thank you for mentioning that.
All right. I'm so glad you guys are here. During Woolsey, I was very much using NOAA Weather Radio to kind of try to predict. But so what you're saying is there's very little predictability about areas that may be calmer or it can be constantly changing. Do you have like historic records that show maybe likelihoods that give you some indications of a safer spot? Say like Bravo 69 is on the top of Saddle Peak. I'm sure they have a wind. Is there anything lower in Topanga down where it might have information? I mean, to use as a tool, while you're there in a fire.
Yeah, there's certainly observations that can be placed, that have been placed. But the main message is that even if that observation looks like it's safe, it's not.
Yeah.
Even if it's calm, what's going on around you, those embers, when those get ejected out of the strong wind zone, those can start new fires that expand rapidly and explosively, then get caught up on the strong winds on the other side of that. And that local wind there, when we're dealing with extreme wind episodes in the general area, is not representative of the danger that you're in. So we certainly can get very fine scale assessments of what the wind is everywhere, but that's not representative necessarily of the fire danger where you are. So the main message is looking at this as an integrated general vicinity. And we do have a lot of observations around us to tell us that.
Sure. And then I would like to say, in support of NOAA, what can we do? Considering that there's some maybe reduction in funding coming.
Well, ultimately, our job here in the National Weather Service is to make sure that everyone is safe, that we're working together with our partner agencies so that you're safe. And the more awareness and the more readiness that people have, the more people are paying attention and thinking about the possibilities of what if. I mean, it may seem like a very nice day. That doesn't mean you're not in grave danger. It just means that it's a nice day where you are right now. And always being vigilant and open to the possibility that things can change rapidly. Having that awareness, having that open-mindedness when it comes to what disasters can strike, even if it feels safe, is so important. That means have a plan ready, have multiple ways of receiving emergency alert information, because those important moments are the difference between life and death.
Sure. Okay, thank you for what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Any other questions? Really glad that you had us here today, and we really want to be engaging with this. And if you would like to talk with us, you're certainly, the microphone's still there, and we'll certainly be around. So I'll pause for a moment and just let anyone who wants to come up speak. Oh, we're at time. Actually, we're at time. So thank you very much, everyone. It's really been great to be here. Everyone's so kind, and have a great day.